Super Smash Bros. Ultimate features a total of 89 playable fighters, and as you would imagine, not all of them would be allowed to say the N-word. But which ones can say the N-word? The distinction may not be as cut and dry as you'd imagine. While Mario is an Italian, and would traditionally be disallowed from ever uttering the N-word, his Metal Mario variant is playable via the debug menu in Smash N64. Metal Mario does appear to have a dark complexion from most angles, so I'd say that he can probably say the N-word. The Inkling will be able to say the N-word, but only some of the time. Certain alternative skin variants to the Inkling give them a dark enough skin to justify casual use of the N-word. It should be noted that the Inkling would only be able to say the N-word while using these other skins, as the base Inkling is white. Villager is in a similar position. While his default skin is white, he can be changed to have a generally black complexion. These darker villagers would obviously be able to say both the soft A N-word as well as the hard R N-word, should they feel compelled. The Inkling and the Villager are basically the only two playable characters with black human skins, so the rest of the fighters will have to be non-humanoids who appear as though they should be able to say the N-word. The first non-human character you think would be able to say the N-word would most likely be Ganondorf, as he has noticeably dark skin. Given the fact that everyone in his race shares this hue, I think it's perfectly reasonable to assume that Ganondorf is allowed to say it. Bowser, on the other hand, is much less clear. He does have an alternative costume which makes his skin darker, but here the question is raised as to whether a non-human can ever say the N-word. With Ganondorf, he at least appears humanoid, but Bowser appears to be some kind of reptile. Does N-word acceptability come from being of African descent, or possessing a generally dark coloration? For the purposes of this video, I will assume the latter, and give Bowser full permission to say the N-word at all times. The same applies to Morton Koopa Jr., an alternative skin for Bowser Jr. Yoshi, on the other hand, even with his darker coloration, has a skin color which is simply not dark enough for saying the N-word. You could expect that there would be grave consequences for Yoshi if he ever did utter that word. I'm not even going to entertain the idea of whether or not Donkey Kong can say the N-word, as this would be too controversial for obvious reasons. For the time being, we'll skip past Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. However, Link, Toon Link, and Young Link would all be able to say the N-word when they are in their Shadow variant. There is a discrepancy as to whether Samus could be permitted to say the N-word. In her darker skin variant, she would be considered black enough to say the N-word, but as you'll know, this only affects her armor, as the human Samus is actually white. If this character were entirely robotic, then they would be able to say the N-word, but taking her real skin tone into account, Samus wouldn't be allowed to say it. Both Kirby and King Dedede have dark enough alts to justify N-word utterance, but Meta Knight poses a more challenging question. He appears gray at best across his various skins, again raising the question of just how black you have to be granted N-word access. For now, I'm going to say that Meta Knight is forbidden from saying the N-word. Wolf and the Dark Falco skin might seem to be black, but I feel as though these anthropomorphized animals are meant to portray white people in spirit, and for this reason, they're also disqualified from the N-word. Among the Pokemon franchise, despite having 8 playable characters, only 2 are capable of saying the N-word, them being Mewtwo and Lucario. While I feel as though Charizard is meant to portray a black person, they are only playable via the Pokemon trainer, who is white. In case you were wondering, Incineroar cannot say the N-word because too much of his body is red to make an argument that he is actually black. It's not extremely apparent what race Captain Falcon is. Close inspection seems to indicate that he is possibly a Southeast Asian or perhaps a very light-skinned Sub-Saharan African. Yet as it turns out, his real name is Andy Summer, which sounds exactly like a white person's name. So no, the N-word is one of the few things that is off-limits for Captain Falcon. Due to the fact that Mr. Game & Watch is entirely black, there is no question that he can say the N-word. The same cannot be said for Dark Pit. One variant of Dark Pit seems to give him olive-colored skin. This kind of Mediterranean complexion really isn't dark enough to warrant any N-word usage. If you're going by the same logic, Mario and Luigi might be able to say it. There's a similar dilemma for a Pokemon trainer variant, but again, it's just not dark enough to recite the N-word. All of the customizable Mii characters can say the N-word, as you can make all of them black. While it isn't extremely obvious exactly what Dark Samus is made of, she definitely is not white, and her dark color naturally grants her N-word usage. With Banjo and Kazooie, Banjo can say it, but Kazooie can't. King K. Rool, being meant to portray a black person in spirit, can say it at any time. The final Smash character who can say the N-word is Steve from Minecraft, because of the Enderman skin, Zombie skin, and a skin erroneously titled Alex White on the Super Smash Bros. Wiki. So there's all of the Smash characters who can say the N-word. Please keep in mind that this doesn't necessarily represent all of the characters who would actually be likely to say the N-word. There are a number of characters who would say it who are not mentioned in this video.